This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. During the age of social distancing, we're recording by phone and releasing new episodes every day.
Every time I see your grave, I can't help but think how I didn't know that you only drank the overtime. I go back there so easily. My mind wanders so efficiently. You are the in and out of consciousness, doing all those things that you would soon regret.
Today's guest is Meg Remy, also known by her musical moniker, U.S. Girls, which recently released its seventh excellent album, Heavy Light. I reached Meg at her home in Toronto.
You forgot to tell me extra welding. You forgot to tell me extra welding. You forgot to tell me.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Meg. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. How's your day going?
Pretty good. I've had a migraine, but other than that, it's been pleasant.
Do you get migraines often?
I don't. It's actually, I've had like one for the past few days, so I think it's just weather related here. It's like it had been pretty warm, and then now it's been cold and kind of low clouds, and I know it's going to get real nice again, so I think there's just weird pressure and quick changes and temperature stuff, you know.
Are you organizing your days any differently now that we're in quarantine times, or how has your life changed, if at all?
It's really not very different than how I live regularly. I mean, I was about to be getting ready to go on tour, so we were going to be starting rehearsals tomorrow for 3 days, like 12-hour rehearsals, and then go, start a 5-week tour. So I would maybe, at this point, if there wasn't a pandemic, packing and sorting things and practicing and whatever. But this is how it is now with no tour. My life is kind of how it always is, with just pretty much being staying at home or around home and doing simple things.
Your new album came out just a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why you had a tour booked. And how did you feel when it became clear that you weren't going to be able to go on tour?
Oh, fine, really. I felt, I've struggled personally with feeling like we all probably shouldn't be touring the way we are and have been. And, I wasn't able to make that decision to say no on my own. And I appreciate that nature's kind of forcing us to make the right decisions. So I felt a sense of relief in my body around, the tour shows kind of being canceled, just resonated with how I, feel in my body that things should be maybe slowing down and, our like just perspective changing in general on things like travel. So I have not really taken this hard. I think I've all the things that this pandemic touches, all the areas are things that I think about often and try to learn more about and talk with my friends about and dissect into kind of music and visual things I make and all of that. So, I haven't had someone die from it. I am not, I'm also, I'm lucky that I live in a nice place. I have a place to live. And, I'm not a healthcare worker. So my situation is obviously, it's pretty, I don't want to, privileged, in order to be able to have a different perspective on it rather than feeling the kind of doom of it.
Going back to something you said before, that you had thoughts that maybe people shouldn't tour the way that we are. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's, all of the kind of information I have is that we really need to be cutting down on carbon. You know, we need to be cutting down on cars and flying and packaged foods. You know, if you've toured before, I know you're a musician. Like, you know, most of the food you're eating is coming out of a package. You took all the packaged foods that bands eat all year. You know, it's just it's pretty wild. It really adds up, and I think that although, you know, what maybe musicians contribute to the kind of polluting and the abuse of the planet, it's nothing compared to the military, you know, or corporations. I know that it's not as much, but if we have the information that what we're doing is contributing and we want there to be larger changes and we're not being examples for that change, you know, it'll never happen. So, taking a sacrifice is scary, and I don't think we have many examples for it. But I think it could catch on if you just had a few people doing it.
So what are you doing with your days now that you're not having to prepare for tour?
Well, I'm in the process of learning guitar like properly, so I work on that. I read. I started my garden, so tending to my seedlings, preparing food and eating it and enjoying that. Talking a lot with my partner about, you know, what's going on, the people we know, how people are handling it, how we're handling it. It's you know, the days, it's interesting how time is it's just evaporated. Days feel very long. They also feel short. It's just, you can't really plan too far ahead, you know, or you have to plan so far ahead, you know. The only way in my mind that I feel like I can make plans is like thinking 2 years ahead.
Are you thinking 2 years ahead?
I mean, I'm always thinking, I think, backwards and forwards, but I can't. I think this is going to be a little bit longer than we're all maybe expecting. I don't know about 2 years that nothing is, you know, but we've never experienced something like this. And, you know, when everything is so set up around the economy, that means that, you know, everything's going to be affected by the economy, and it's just so flimsy, right? That I can't predict, though. I don't know.
Speaking of thinking backwards, what's your earliest memory?
I can remember, I have a few early ones, and I don't know what order they particularly go in. But I can remember being at a Billy Joel concert, and he was married to Christy Brinkley at the time, and she came on stage and tied his shoe. It had become untied, and she came up and tied his shoe. And I bet they did that every night. You know, it was part of the show. But I wore a red jacket, and there was people partying around us, and I got beer spilled on me. I think I was maybe 3 or 4. That's my first real solid memory. I think because it was probably loud. It was my first time in an arena. I had been spilled on. There was these epic things, you know. But I can remember earlier than that, maybe the moon. I can remember a specific, like looking at the moon.
And you grew up in Chicago?
I grew up outside Chicago. Yeah, suburb.
Which suburb?
Joliet, Illinois.
Nice. I grew up in Milwaukee.
Okay, I love Milwaukee.
Were your parents musical people?
Like into music, you know. I really think like if you're from the Midwest, you're into music. It seems to be a thing that I found. But yeah,
More so than other places?
I think so, but I'm probably biased, but I don't know. My mom's from Gary, Indiana, so she's like all Motown,
Jackson
she
5.
really, she just loved all Motown and would go see all the Motown groups in Chicago. And my dad was real rock and, into everything, and just tons of, such good radio. I live in Canada now, and the radio is definitely better in the States. I mean, there's obviously, that's a stupid comparison to make, maybe because there's so many more stations in the States, but there was good radio when I was growing up, and I think when my parents, the radio meant something, and it really delivered new things. I mean, I can really remember finding out about new songs from the radio.
Would you ever tape the radio?
Oh, yeah, constantly. I would call into Oldies 104.3. I can't remember what the call letters were, but I would call and I would sing songs. And made
Which
a lot
songs
of
would you sing?
Mostly Beach Boys. It was like when I was in this Beach Boys period, that was like I would go, when I was younger, I would get into these just periods of obsession with groups. That it happened with the Beatles for sure. I think in the Beach Boys were right after it, and I remember calling, doing Barbara Ann, Be True to Your School, like the kind of like those drinking song kind of ones that they had. It sounded like. I think I thought I could get away with singing, not a more maybe melodic one, but so much radio and taping. Like B96 was another station that I listened to a lot, and that's probably when I was taping the most, which was like dance music and R&B. I would tape the countdowns and stuff. Every night they would do the top 10 songs or whatever.
When did you start to develop taste that was a little distinct from your parents?
Oh, I think probably, like I got real into, like, I guess what I called at the time, like alternative music, or like, I don't know, but it was kind of harder. I like got into Korn and stuff, like kind of rap rock stuff. I really got into Korn. I really connected with that band. And I actually saw them a few years ago, and they were great. And they were really earnest and like so happy to be there and really giving it. And I thought I was impressed with seeing them. I had never seen them when I was like actually a rabid fan, but probably then I can remember, just my mom not really liking the yelling, and like the language and stuff. She just was not into that. But then then from that I got into punk. So I think that's when it really started kind of. But my mom always there would always be some song I could find that she liked, from a group, or I can remember her liking, like a specific Crass song, She's like, oh, I like this one,
Open-minded.
I guess, yeah.
You mentioned before that you used to call into the radio station and sing. Did you play any instruments in addition to singing?
No, I'm always singing. I never took any lessons, but my first instrument before, the first musical gear I ever got was I got an amp with a microphone that plugged into it that had an input so I could plug like a boombox into it, or a Discman. And I would sing over songs in the garage.
How did it feel in your body to do that at the time?
So great, but then also like my body would be split in two, where I was fully in the performance, but then a fraction of me was split off, always worried that the garage door was going to open. You know what I mean? You don't want someone to see you. Hearing's okay, but then if they actually saw you. But then,
Oh,
we
that's
would
interesting.
yeah.
Right, because the sound is going through the garage door to a certain extent, and your neighbors are hearing it, and they can deduce that it's probably Meg singing in the garage again.
But they can't confirm it for sure, and they can't see how I'm moving and stuff. You know.
Did you have a whole internal world that was enriching this experience? Like, did you visualize an audience around you or anything like that?
No. I think I was just like almost like just performing for myself. But then sometimes, like when I got more, I don't know if it was I then started craving an audience or I was ready for one. Like I would have friends come over and then we would take turns like performing for each other, you know. So, and then that led to me, I started like asking in school if I could perform songs in class.
Like, how old were you when you started doing that?
That high school, like freshman year of high school. I just was like, I determined to get through my Catholic school, you know, and like leave it.
Oh, you were raised Catholic.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I got all my sacraments and all that.
So how did you transition from being somebody that was afraid that the garage door was open to actively asking to sing in school?
I think because I got into Riot Girl. I got really into Bikini Kill and all this stuff that was saying like, you have a duty to just do this for other girls and women or something. I really internalized that. Like, maybe I don't want to be famous, let's say, but I want to encourage other women or girls to know that they can or something. So I'm going to like show them like you can do this thing where you like stand in front of people and you say what you want to say. Basically, I think it was more than it was like more than a performance thing. It was getting your chance to say what you want to say.
How did that go over in Catholic school?
Oh God, you know, I wasn't very popular, you know.
Was it an all-girls school?
No. No, it was not an all-girls school, but, you know, I think it was just kids were shocked at my wanting to do that, you know. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know why I was doing that. I don't know if I was trying to take heat off of other people and put it on me. I don't know. I don't know what the hell it was. Or I think I wanted to cause trouble there, you know. Me starting high school at a Catholic high school really coincided with me like learning things like the word patriarchy and capitalism and
you're
like
going to the center of patriarchy.
That it was just like, oh, I need to tell people about this, or like I need to like be an example of that there's these words and that like you should know what these words are or something, you know. I can't really fully explain it. But
I'm kind of like picturing you with you know, your Discman and a Bikini Kill CD and reading some sort of Noam Chomsky or Howard Zinn book.
Yes,
hanging out in the halls of high school.
Definitely. Well, and I like how I would do the songs was, so there was a person that was my really good friend named Kenny Sunshine, and he was a year older than me. And I met him the summer before I started high school, and it turns out he went to the school I was going to go to. So it was like, great, okay, we're going to be best friends, because I knew he had to be the only punk there, you know? So when I would do songs, I would get a note, like he would get a pass from his class to come to my class to play guitar. So we were kind of doing show. Yeah, they were kind of a little bit show. So my first band was with him in like freshman year of high school.
What was that band called?
That band was called Plastic Progress. Pretty heavy.
Were you writing your own material?
Definitely. Oh yeah. I think we did. We definitely did some covers, but we were a Casio keyboard with the pre-programmed drum machine on it. You know, the drum settings, and then some keyboards, and then guitar. And we both sang.
What were your dreams at that point? Did you want to be in a band like Bikini Kill, or did you want to kind of like start your own movement, or was this central to who you were as a person at that point, or was it more something that you did?
No, I think it was just like I found my zone, which was just like expressing myself through, this is concurrent with like starting to make zines and doing collaging and stuff. So it was just like the idea of expression. I had loved music my whole life. I never thought of it as expression, as a person expressing their unique existence and how they, we all have these kind of fundamental blocks, but we stack them in different ways, and you express the way you stack your blocks, and I just didn't know about that. I mostly knew about sports, before I really got into like kind of alternative music than punk. So I knew about...
Were you an athlete too?
I was, yeah.
And did you feel like being an athlete and getting into punk rock were mutually exclusive when you were in high school? Like, did you feel like you had to choose?
Yeah, for sure. Except my friend and bandmate, Kenny Sunshine, he played hockey and he was also a punk. So I knew it could be done, but it did feel that I couldn't do both, because I think because my eyes had been open to so many things that, I think I wished that there were sports at the school available that weren't like a team thing, and that weren't about winning. 'Cause I loved playing still, but I don't want to be on I just already by that time I didn't like war terminology, or just like that kind of aspect of sports. And the school I went to was a big sports school. So, which Catholic schools often are, because that's how they get money and stuff, So, to be into sports would have been, at that school or at that time for me would have been being too agreeable or something,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I love sports, but when I was in high school, it felt like, getting into athletics was almost like being complacent in a way.
For sure. Yep.
I had a similar experience. For my freshman year, I went to a Jesuit high school, and me and my one friend had the free Mumia table in the cafeteria.
Amazing, yes. I mean, it's terrible. We're laughing at that. You know what I mean? Because what's crazy is that...
And people threw hamburgers at us.
Of course they did, yeah. And it's like, you think about that and you realize, it's things like, really, you're like, oh yeah, that's why Trump got elected.
Yeah, all of those people ended up winning.
Well, yeah. Well, because it's their game, and it's not our game. And I think I want no game. Life's already a game, so they can win all they want in that zone. But yeah, that's sad that it's
funny to me to remember.
Yeah, for sure. If you don't laugh, you'll cry,
There's nothing wrong with crying, Meg. I can cry too.
I cry constantly, so.
When was the last time you cried?
only a few days ago. I'm a double Cancer, so I'm so watery and emotional, and I just don't hesitate to cry. If I feel a tear coming, I let it go.
What did you do after high school?
I moved to Portland, Oregon, and was in bands and stuff. Just, yeah, went out there, and I went to school too. Concurrently, I went to school and went to art school, and then, for me, I moved out there I had a band. I had a band like that, was just a whatever kind of band, but everyone wanted to move out there, and we were all real obsessed with that band Glass Candy at the time. And Glass Candy lived in Portland, so we all moved there. And it was cheap still then, it was, I had I lived alone, which was rare. Most people lived in a house where you pay like $100, and I remember having an apartment for $400. That was a massive apartment. It was so nice, $400 in Portland now, you can't get it's just so different, like every city, but I was in Portland for like 4 years and was in a bunch of bands out there and worked at some venues and toured for the first time seriously along the West Coast and things. And then towards the end of my being there, I started doing U.S. Girls and made my first record there.
Yeah, what inspired you to start working on your own as U.S. Girls versus being in a band?
I had this friend, Eva, who was my closest friend and still is a dear, dear friend and sister of mine. And she had a project called Inca Ore. And she had been in bands and we had always played together and encouraged each other as musicians and things. And then she started recording solo material with a 4-track. And it blew my mind. I didn't know that you could do that. And so she moved away and she gave me her 4-track and to hold on to. And it was just, I taught myself how to use it and just started making stuff. It felt so, it was like a game or something, it was like addictive, like a Nintendo or something. So I just started making weird things without really thinking about what they were or that anyone would hear them. And then I had really amassed a lot of songs and, played them for a friend who was curious, who then said he'd help me mix some, pick some songs and he'd help me mix them and show me how you do that and bounce down and all that. And then it was like I had a record. So I just made a record, not knowing I was making a record.
Were you proud of it when you made it?
Yeah, because I made it, so it was like anything I'd ever made, which is just, yeah, feels very valid to me, and I was part of a kind of culture at that time, which was the CDR culture and stuff, which is like you just make something, you put it on a CDR, and you just make 10 of them, and you give them to some people, or you send them to your friends in other towns that send their CDRs to you and stuff like that. So I sent it, I made some copies and sent it around, and then my friend who had a radio show in Davis, California, DJ Rick Ely, I bet he's still there at KDVS, in Davis, yeah, and then someone wrote me because they heard it on the radio and they wanted to put the record out on vinyl, so it just, that happened, and then it kind of hasn't stopped since that. I've made 7 records since then. So, and feeling the same way that I'm proud of them and they're valid and they're just part of this kind of library of expression or something. That's my life's work or something like this.
What is your inner dialogue like around your art? It seems like you're very positive. Is there ever a critical voice that you hear when you're making things?
course, it's right alongside the positive one, trying to drown it out. Just, yeah, I have lots of insecurities, and, you know, as this became more, more opportunities started coming up for it, you know, and working with bigger labels and touring more and having a booking agent and having to work more in the media, you know, I think that the insecurity and that the negative voice has grown louder for sure. But I'm lucky I already had established that kind of who gives a fuck voice, you know, that will always be there and won't ever go away. You know, I can't imagine having been, you know, these people that maybe get to start touring in a big way when they're like 17 or 18, you know, and having all of these things that I'm now doing now as a woman in my 30s. I wouldn't have been able to navigate that as a younger person at all.
Why not?
Because it's a mind fuck, man. It's like, it's so bizarre. You wouldn't, I don't think you'd be able to understand as a younger person that it's not about you, really.
Right. You could even say that even the songs aren't about you, even if it's something that expresses your individuality. In the end, it's coming from somewhere else, right? Well,
yeah, and that, but even just that the attention and it's hard to know what's what and what matters in life. And I would think, you know, as a 17 or 18-year-old or something, how would you prepare for the rest of your life if you had these really kind of exceptional experiences right off the bat? Everything would just be downhill after that, it seemed like. Or you wouldn't be able to understand, like, life has peaks and valleys, and it's also cyclical, and, you know, there's so much more there than, and I don't know, I've really found as I'm aging that the best things come in, like, almost in private moments, you know. Not in a public way, not when you're getting approbation or, I don't know.
Right, because those types of things are beyond you. I mean, you can put the music out into the world, but then it has to interact with people, however it's going to interact with people. You don't have any control over that.
No. But then there are, you know, if we're talking about where the kind of zone that I'm working in within the industry, there are certain things that are made so by labels, you know, and press people and who the press people know and how that's part of the press is to make the people who are consuming the press, to make those people feel like it was their idea to find this person, you know? Mm-hmm. This artist, and have you heard about this artist, or have you heard about so or this record? And it's like, you know, if you have enough infrastructure around you, they're making sure that people are hearing you. You know, they have to, because they've invested, and so it's really tied up with advertising and you know. It's all who you know. So you know, the relationship, press, and everyone has a relationship with the press. And you're not doing well without a good relationship with the press. Well, in the sense of the industry. Yeah.
Do you think that it's incumbent upon the artist to seek out that relationship with the press?
No, I think, well, that's what's interesting, because I think a lot of artists are doing it through social media now, where they're reaching people directly. And so they're generating their own press that doesn't feel like press, but it is. but it's up to the label too, in terms of real press relationships and those things. I think that, the label's the one who's kind of dictating most of that stuff.
Right. I mean, one thing that I'm interested in is trying to determine what is the artist's responsibility beyond creating the art. Like, it's kind of like if you're a parent, you can make a baby, but then you want to make sure that that child has the best chance in the world, knowing that after a certain point you have to let go. So if an album is a baby, then what's your responsibility?
Well, I think maybe I wouldn't agree that an album is a baby. Maybe that's, but that metaphor is difficult. And I don't know if I'd be able to speak to it having not had a child myself, but I don't know. For me, my responsibility has to be to myself first.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be to what the label is maybe ideally wanting, or what they're used to from people, or I can't try and match my responsibility to what I see other artists doing or something, or I just think you choose for yourself what you want your responsibility to be. And that's probably based on what you want the outcome to be. So for me, I want to continue making work without, continue making work so that and make a living wage from it, and be able to just that keeps facilitating itself. That I'm not having to do a 9-to-5 job. I'm not interested in amassing wealth or not being able to walk down the street or having 1 million followers or something like this. So it's really just the continuation of being able to make work and not have to do that thing that I did for so many years, which I'm grateful I did, but was, balancing making rent money, finding time to work on these, expressions and things like this. So I'm trying to, so my responsibility or what I want to take on it as my responsibility is I think keeping that in mind, So I say no to a lot of things. And I think it's maybe why this COVID thing isn't a shock to my system. Because it doesn't feel like, I know I'll continue to make things for my whole life. So if this disrupts me and I get to live through it, and it's a disruption of a year where everything's kind of off balance, and before it settles into whatever the new kind of paradigm's going to be post-pandemic, whatever, I'm good. I don't feel, I'm not operating from a place of scarcity where it's like, this record just came out and now it's dead in the water or something, it's just kind of like, okay, man, I have no control over this.
Right.
What do I know? I'm going to continue making things. This isn't the last record I'm ever going to make. So I don't get to tour it, maybe. That's fine. Like, that's fine. It's, I think that things have become too, like, equation in the industry. You know what I mean? Like, case in point, that phrase, link in bio. You know that fucking phrase?
Yes.
It's like, I don't need to, like, okay, so we're, like, what? It feels so almost bureaucratic, It's like so fucking boring. And I feel like that in general.
Yes, like the idea that art is now content. It's just like this generic sawdust that fills the space in between.
Because it is a little bit. It's both. It's both now, because content facilitates advertising, and it facilitates the gathering of data and honing of algorithms, and it really is, it's filler, it's fodder, it's whatever the word you want to use.
It's distraction, or, wallpaper.
Well, it's just a thing that's standing in front of the true thing, which is behind, which is this nonstop generating of data, in order to, I really think it's better control people and things like this. So I was just reading it. It's funny talking about Bikini Kill earlier because I found this zine that I had of Toby Vale's.
Mm-hmm.
Toby Vale, the drummer, did this zine for years, and in it there's these like kind of rules for the music industry that she's rattling off, that she's come up with, and there's one that is so amazing. That's like a band, you don't have to make a record to then tour. You know what I mean? Like, right? I think and that's what I mean by that equation of like, okay, you make the record, first single drops, wait a minute, second single drops, tour dates announced. They do the tours, then we got a third single. Like it's always the same thing. And so it's made things really limiting, and I think it's made things difficult for people that don't travel or don't want to or can't get a booking agent. I mean, you need a booking agent now. I can remember when you could call venues and book a show.
Yes, that's when I started touring.
You
when I was
can't
17.
do that.
No,
you can't do that. And it's like you need a 9-month lead time or whatever. It's just like, what? So what do people do that don't have booking agents, can't pay for press, whatever? They don't tour. Even if they want to, maybe they can't. And there just needs to be more options for musicians. There needs to be regional scenes and local scenes, and that people could, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to be a musician in your own town. But also, I miss the just making music to make it instead of it needing to be to get from post to post, instead of just like, yeah, we're getting together to jam and just like mess around. It doesn't have to be we're a band now. Here's our press photo. Here's the thing.
Here's my
or
Instagram.
Whatever. Yeah.
So do you do that? Do you get together with friends or by yourself and just play for joy?
No, because I don't play a proper instrument yet. That's why I'm trying to learn guitar. I mean, I love singing along to songs and stuff, but that's the thing. I don't really, because I mean that's a whole other conversation. When making music becomes your life, and what comes along with all of that is so much the content generation. Like that, when I have time, when I'm not working on specific music stuff or doing things like this, or I mean I'm mostly reading, honestly, is what I do with my time. And that's mostly what I do.
Let's take a moment. You are what you are. I know what love is. One look, if you wanna see. There's a real spot for you and one for me. A cage holds you. We all got when we go. But me and me up and down the line. Who's the keys? What you need to know.
Your new album has a song or a track called Advice to Teenage Self.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody's probably already asked you what advice you would give to your teenage self. So instead, I'll ask you what advice you would ask for from your 70-year-old self.
Oh my Lord. Oh Lord. Does anger still exist? Like, as a 70-year-old person, I guess that's not advice. I would want to be knowing what it's like to be 70, basically. Will I still be so angry? or will I still, will things hold less weight? But I guess if I'm asking for advice from my 70-year-old self, for myself now, I mean, how can I, like my 70-year-old self's telling me something now?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm going to have to guess what they would tell me, which was keep doing yoga, I guess. Don't stop. Don't give up on doing yoga. Flexibility of the body is what leads to flexibility of the mind. And just don't ever stop, I would think.
What are you angry about?
Oh, personal things. Just personal life, family, hurts, and I think also I get really angry at other people. I have a problem where I can get real preachy, or if I learn something, I'm annoyed that everyone else doesn't know it, and why can't people get their shit together? And, I can get real I can get up on my high horse for sure.
Yeah. Is that something that you aspire to change? I mean, is it beneficial to get on your high horse in any way?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I really if you look at like what Zen writings say, it's like, don't teach,
Right.
Don't teach, don't preach. And that's not how anyone learns anyway. So.
Right. You can't persuade somebody who believes something completely different from you just by appealing to their sense of logic.
No, and then you have to question yourself of, are you really trying to teach someone, or are you just trying to show that you know something?
Yeah, or is it just important to you to demonstrate that you're correct?
Exactly.
And if so, why?
Because it gives you a little false hit of thinking you have something figured out, I guess, which There's no figuring out anything, I think that's what's so interesting about this current pandemic is it's I think a lot about death, and I feel like I'm actively preparing. I've been preparing for it, not just my death, but the death of people I love.
What do you do to actively prepare for it?
I think that you think about it and you really meditate on that. It is it's the only inevitability. They say death and taxes, but it's, fuck taxes, but it's death. You can't escape it. When you're born, you die, if you are born, your death is guaranteed. So we celebrate, I've said this many times, it's like we celebrate a baby being born. But it's almost like within that process of a celebration, we should be also celebrating its eventual death. If a baby knows, a human being knows their whole life that this thing is going to happen and this is part of life. And, I think that it not only it just makes more sense to me, because then you're connected with cycles, and you could see yourself as just this very tiny, tiny part of nature, and you won't think you're above it or a puppet master of it, and you'll have respect for the things that you use that do come from death or cause death, or it's just, and I found that, seeing some people's reaction to the pandemic reveals to me that some of these people have never thought about their death.
Well, you were talking earlier about the front end to big data, right? Or just content. And I think that stuff is primarily designed to distract us from our own mortality.
Yeah. Because we need a distraction. Otherwise, why the hell will we continue going on with this bullshit that they've set up? Which is what is also interesting about this pandemic is people are in our town, there's like posters up and stuff like April 1st, keep your rent, don't pay your rent, like, or like people that are working from home that are realizing like, I could work from home. I don't need to be going into the office every day. Like I think it's going to be opening up making people think about some things. Hopefully it seems a little bit, but then unfortunately, I feel that the overwhelming outcome is just like Netflix's stock's going to go through the fucking roof or whatever. I don't know. Like,
Zoom stock.
What's Zoom?
It's a video conferencing software that
like
lots of
Skype.
people- yeah, it's like that.
Okay.
When you were a child and you were being raised Catholic, did you believe in afterlife?
No, I didn't. I never. That's the thing. I was raised Catholic, but I never embodied it really or related to a lot of it. I liked the rituals around it and things like that, but what kind of ideals they held, I didn't. I don't. Yeah, I never thought that, and I'm not sure how I think about it now. I just think anything's possible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the blatant uncertainty that we're experiencing as a world right now is it's no more uncertain than any other day. It's just more blatant. It's more obviously blatant, like obviously uncertain.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because it's like, it was not that long ago that 1 billion animals just burned in Australia, And it's like, I don't know how much uncertainty we need to feel it. It's like this pandemic has killed, it's killed people and it's going to. Mm-hmm. But 1 billion animals? Like,
well, billions of animals die all the time, every year in the meat industry.
I know. Same thing.
Do you eat meat?
I don't. I try not to. I don't buy it. I just, if I go to someone's house and they've made it, I'll eat it. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with eating meat, but there is something that is just, we are paying for what we have done to animals, and we're going to continue to pay. And it's so interesting, the relation to the climate in that, cow farts, it's just like, holy moly, water, all the,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think that's what we're here to do, is to change the atmosphere and put a bunch of plastic into the world so that the next species can eat plastic.
we don't know. Whatever, it's definitely going to be fine though.
We might not, but it will.
But that's the thing, is we are a part of it. So, it will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. The molecules in our bodies will eventually abandon us and become something else.
For sure. Mm-hmm. It doesn't scare me. Doesn't scare me.
When you say that you've been preparing for death, have you been with anybody as they're dying?
No, never.
I'll only say this. I mentioned this when I was talking to someone else this week who was expressing the same sentiments. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, in my opinion, being with somebody that you love as they're dying has been it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it felt very natural and also kind of unremarkable. I mean, it's something that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
And for me, somebody who was kind of obsessed with death from a young age, because when I asked my parents what happens, they said, I don't know. No one's ever come back to tell us.
Oh my goodness.
Which is honest. But anyway, I was, from a young age, scared of death. And I think finally, after I got to see my dad drift to the next plane, that it took death off of a pedestal in a way,
Yeah.
where I know it's coming, and I'm not in any rush to
Yeah.
go there, but it doesn't seem like this abstract idea, and the abstract was scarier than the reality.
Definitely. I've only heard I've heard from close friends and family members what it was like for them to be in the same room, and it's just always been that it's been beautiful. But yeah, no, I think similar. No, there's no like fireworks or a door that appears or like.
I mean,
It's
that's
just a
somebody.
gentle beauty.
Yes. I mean,
Gentle beauty.
there's definitely, obviously, plenty of tragic cases where it's needless and
Sure.
unwanted, and the person isn't ready. But that's just one instance that I've been a part of.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, I say I'm trying to get ready or I'm getting ready, but I don't know if there is ever a. I think it's similar to deciding, and like to have a child, where people are like, okay, we need to have X amount of money, and we gotta like buy a house first, or you try to plan for these things, and you can't be ready for having a child, and you can't be ready for death because it's so unknown. So you can kind of. But I don't, yeah, it's worth trying to prepare. My partner and I, we don't have a child, but we discuss it a lot. And if we do have one, I'm grateful that we discussed it so much because, I mean, you just take Christmas, for example. If you're a person that celebrated Christmas and then you're partner with someone and they've celebrated Christmas, you celebrate it differently. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a small thing compared to a child. There's a lot to discuss, and most of it, I think, is your own childhood. And I think that is what I've found is really one of the biggest blessings of being partnered, is to be able to go through my childhood with a friend and really do that work. And acknowledge like the child that lives within each of us and kind of almost greet it daily.
Did you read The Artist's Way?
Yeah, a long time ago.
It's sounding kind of like
Really?
what she was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember it much, but yeah, I remember enjoying it.
Yeah, she talks about the child inside of you.
Oh yeah. We all got one.
Yeah. So, was that kind of the inspiration for advice to teenage self?
Yeah, I always do like interludes or little skits on my records, just kind of to mix it up or kind of discuss maybe themes or ideas in a more naked way. And so the advice to teenage self, and there's two others on the record that are these kind of prompt-based collages of people speaking about on these prompts, and it was just kind of drawing from themes on the record. And yeah, I had taken a theater workshop where I did a prompt-based exercise, and I had never done anything like that, and I found it really fascinating, and it was almost kind of therapy-like, and it felt like a really good exercise for the brain. So the record's a lot about kind of childhood and past and these things. So yeah, came from that for sure.
When you say you're working through your childhood with your partner, are you guiding one another, or are you working with somebody else? Or
well, I mean, I go to therapy. I'm in therapy, but we help each other out. Because I think when you're partnered with someone, you're constantly witnessing them doing things. And often they're things that are kind of maybe old behaviors they don't need anymore, or that you don't need anymore, or you start noticing things, especially when you get to know your partner's family too.
Mm-hmm.
It really comes up. And we find that when when we're having disagreements or we're on different levels with each other, it's often our childhoods are butting heads, the way we were raised and the things that we internalized and the way we do things, the way we organize. So,
right. And I think lots of people are inclined to forget that everybody was raised differently. And so there's these underlying assumptions that are not often true.
Even your own siblings were raised different than you.
Yeah, even yourself in different stages of your life.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. So, from my personal experience, it's like if I want my relationship to work, I have to acknowledge my child self, acknowledge my partner's child self, kind of bow to it, listen to it, and then it seems like there's a fighting chance of evolving together and assisting each other and being good witnesses, instead of just partnering with a person that you're going to use to try to cover up your shit,
Right. Lots of people seek out they seek out some sort of fantasy world with the partner.
Yeah.
Like it's a step to kind of escape whatever happened in their childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can't escape it.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. No. It's there. It's there.
Well, Meg Remy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.